As a follow-up, could I ask Mr. Miller, please? You talked about a crackdown on abuse of study permits and visas and so forth, but there are still a number of people who are not abiding by the terms of their study permits and not turning up to study, and some of them apparently are making it over the border.
It's your article this morning. Right?
Yeah. But what I wondered was, is there anything else in the pipeline to maybe tighten things up so that so that people who are applying for a study permit or another visitor visa are actually doing it for legitimate purposes? And just to follow up my colleague here, on the sharing of information about permanent residents, are you concerned at all about privacy? And could you elaborate on what kind of information you're giving the United States about permanent residents, what personal information you're sharing?
It's last question first. I'm not going to give you the full slate of elements that we are sharing with the U.S. Everyone knows constitutionally, as you cross the border, your expectation of privacy is lessened, whether you're a Canadian citizen or not. I think we do have a heightened duty towards Canadian citizens to make sure that we protect their personal information. Permanent residents have rights as well. The point here is that we found it important as a safety measure to make sure that gap was closed. It's something that the U.S. wanted, we wanted as well, so that we can make our own determinations at the border. So it is, like I said earlier, really mission critical to a safe management of the border, and that was critical in the decision making in cabinet, but also the decision to sign the agreement and put it into place, because it was, I think, a gap in some of our information sharing that we thought it was legitimate to share information on on permanent residents. Now, yes, absolutely, there is a concern about people's privacy. There are safeguards within the agreement that we believe are reasonable to safeguard people's privacy. Your first question on, I've heard from colleges and universities that and other institutions that welcome international students, they don't want me to do a single thing more over the next little while. I've told them quite clearly that they should not expect large major changes as we look at the impact of the already major changes that we've made over the last year with respect to the international student program. This is an area that thrives on stability, but obviously what we were seeing over the course of the last few years was not acceptable. My efforts in all this have been to make sure that each institution, particularly provincial governments, but also the institutions that are welcoming these students, exercise their obligations in making sure that the students have the proper experience, make sure they pay their tuition, make sure that they get the proper education, and perhaps migrate into the workforce, perhaps even become Canadian citizens. But it's not a guarantee. It should not be the selling point. You're here to study, and that should be the basic premise. The article that you published this morning deals with data going into the early part of 2024. We think those numbers are significantly down as a result of the measures that we've taken, particularly on ensuring the solvency of people coming here, particularly in being a little more restrictive in the criteria that we impose for people to come here and study, including the cap, and making it so that it isn't what it currently had become perceived to be, which is as a backdoor way of becoming a permanent resident of Canada and not a way of studying at a legitimate institution. Is there more work to do, and are there adjustments? I would think certainly there are a few that I will be looking at over the course of the next few months to make sure that the system has even more integrity than it currently has. So I don't exclude it, but I think I owe it to the institutions and colleges, as well as the students themselves, to make sure that the measures that we're taking currently, additionally, will be a little more surgical.